So today, full moon day. Full moon is at 16 degrees of Aries. It's at 4:50. The exact time of the full moon is 4:54 p.m. Eastern time. So that is, again, that's Eastern time. If you are in a different time zone, then you'll have to translate that to your own time. It is interesting to note that at the time of the full moon, Chiron will be 2 degrees away from the moon in Aries. So that will be playing into the energy of the full moon today. I think it's also important to look at the condition of Venus during this full moon. Venus is 3 degrees away from the sun, so she is in an applying aspect, an applying conjunction with the sun. At this time, being that she's only 3 degrees away, it is said that Venus is under the beams of the sun. So we are no longer able to see Venus. She is in an invisible phase at the moment. A full Venus phase is approximately 18 months. The Venus cycle starts with the inferior conjunction. That is at the time that Venus is retrograde, and that is when Venus switches from the evening star phase to the morning star phase. So that happened approximately 9 months ago at the last Venus-Sun conjunction. With this next Venus-Sun conjunction, we have the superior conjunction. So that is when Venus switches from her morning star phase to her evening star phase. So now we will be looking for Venus in the evening sky after the sun sets. Previously, we have been able to see Venus in the sky in the morning before the sun rises. So now we will be looking at the evening sky for the sun. So, what is the difference between Venus's morning star phase and evening star phase? In the morning star phase, Venus is carries a little bit younger traits with her. So she's a little more impulsive. She is she may act first and kind of think later. Emotion driven, kind of wears her heart on her sleeves. Spontaneous, idealistic, eager, maybe not always thinking things throughly. In her evening star phase, Venus is much more mature. She's much more deliberate, much more patient. She's more self-giving rather than self-serving in a balanced way. There is a point that we should point out there with Venus being in Libra. Now that she's in the evening star phase and she is willing to give a little more to others, where in her morning star phase she's a little more self-serving and wanting to serve herself rather than others in community. So now that she's in the evening star phase and she's willing to give more of herself, the fact that she's in Libra, the shadow side that we should be looking for here is to be sure that we don't give too much of ourselves without getting enough back. Libra does have that tendency to want to satisfy others and serve others, so that's something that we will want to be looking for here in the evening star phase. The process that Venus goes through throughout her whole cycle, so this is an 18-month cycle that we are approximately halfway through. This cycle can be depicted in the various stories of Venus in her various forms and her journey to and from the underworld. So as Venus starts in her morning star phase, this is said to be her journey into the underworld. And along her journey, as she goes through the gates to the underworld, she is slowly stripped of her powers and her magic that she holds. So when she gets to the underworld, she has went through a lot of struggles and she's lost a lot of herself. So when she's at the underworld, and she's under the, under the beams of the sun. She's sacrificing herself to something other than herself. And as she switches over to the evening star phase and she begins to make her descent from the underworld back into so as she makes her descent from the underworld, she comes back through those same gates where she lost all of her powers, and she slowly builds them back up. So this is the point where we're at right now with Venus. She's currently in the underworld, or you can think of, so this is where we currently are with Venus. You can think of her as being currently in the underworld, and she has went through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and a lot of breaking down. And now she is building into a more mature version of herself. I kind of think of it, liken it to, if you know anything about the triple goddess. So we have the idea of the maiden or the mother, and the crone. I kind of liken it to the maiden, the maid and the maiden phases of our life. So when Venus rises from the underworld as the evening star, she's much more in the mother goddess phase of her life. So she's learned a lot. She has a lot of wisdom to give. So here, what I would like you to think about is in the Venusian activities of your life, and you can kind of think back to the last 9 months or so of your life, where have you acted maybe in your morning star way, in your morning star aspect? What changes can you make to approach these Venusian activities in more of an evening star Venusian type of way? Can you be a little more philosophical? Can you be a little more patient? Can you be a little more deliberate and a little more painstaking with your actions? And can you be a little more fulfilling to yourself? Can you be a little more fulfilling towards others, and in turn use that to fill yourself? Venus is all about love, balance, harmony, filling of the cups, things that make us feel good and make us feel whole again. So where can you use that? I already mentioned that Chiron is sitting next to the moon during the full moon. So that means that Chiron is opposite of Venus. And I think that this is also very symbolic of where Venus is at right now in her cycle. Chiron is the wounded warrior. Chiron represents the wounds that we hold, the pains and the traumas and the baggages that we carry. We all have baggages that we carry, whether they're from they're conscious or unconscious, whether they are from our current life or our past life. We all have baggage and karma that we carry with us. And Venus is at this point right now where she is at a turning point where she's going to use the pain and use what she has use her struggles and her experiences to rise from the ashes like a phoenix, rise like a beautiful goddess that she is. So how can you do the same thing? How can you use your trials and your tribulations? How can you use your Chiron to grow from it? How can you use that to find the god or goddess in you? How can you use what you have learned from your pain and your suffering to serve yourself and to serve others? I know I keep talking a lot about serving others, but it really goes hand in hand. We are all connected. When you help others, you help yourself. When you fill others' cups, you fill your own. It is important to make sure we do those things for ourselves, but it's also important to make sure we do things for others as well. It really just goes hand in hand. We are all interconnected. Let's see. I think I already mentioned, but I do the kind of the shadow side of the serving others is neglecting the self. But that's why it's really important to find balance. And that is the cycle between and the ebb and flow between the new moon and the full moon. It's creating and fulfilling. It's initiating and receiving and giving and fulfilling at the same time. It's really, really, really great, really wonderful. So it's also important to mention the Saturn-Uranus square that we have going on. This is an energy we've been on for a few days. I believe we are in the separating end of it, but it's still there and it's still very important, especially since these are slower moving planets, especially as a group and as a community and as a population and consciousness in general. So we're looking at, with Saturn-Uranus square, we're looking at a bit of a clash for a need of balance and structure, clashing with the need for freedom and spontaneous action. So those two, Saturn and Uranus, they are very, very different from each other. So how can you find balance between the two of those? I feel like this is also brings us back to where Venus is right now. She's coming into her conjunction with the sun, so she's going to be at a crossroads with her morning star phase and her evening star phase. I feel like all of these aspects that we have with the full moon right now, they are kind of pulling us back and forth between two different crossroads. And I think I mentioned this last Tuesday on our healing meditation circle that we do every Tuesday. I feel like this is a bit of a completion before a new beginning. I feel like we're at a little bit of a crossroads. I feel like a lot of us feel like we're being pulled in two different directions. And with the full moon, it's time to take action. It's time to fulfill anywhere that we may have been spinning our wheels. And speaking of spinning our wheels, we have Pluto stationing direct right at this moment with the new moon. And that's very significant of kind of the action of wheels stop spinning and movement forward. Pluto has been in Capricorn for a long time now. Now that it's direct, this is going to put Pluto into its path into Capricorn, from Capricorn into Aquarius. So Pluto in Capricorn has been breaking down a lot of old structures that no longer work. So I feel that we're being called to continue that process, which means action, which means deciding which way of those crossroads you're going to go. Are you going to go left or are you going to go right? Because right now it's time to go. So we need to figure out which way we're going to go. As Pluto works its way towards Aquarius, this is going to have some sort of humanitarian, probably some sort of technological element to it moving forward in a transformative rebirth, death kind of way. So Pluto is definitely moving on its path forward, and it's gonna take us from Capricorn into Aquarius. So we'll see where that takes us together. We also have Mercury at the, first let's go talk about Mars applying Neptune square. So we also have an applying square between Mars and Neptune. Mars is, I believe, 1 to 2 degrees away from an applying square with Neptune. This could go a couple different ways. So the fact that this is on applying on a full moon, I see this as definitely a energy that's supporting spiritual action. This is going to be perfect for a a full moon ritual. Basically what we're looking at here is spiritual action, or purpose-driven spirituality. So a good way that you could use this energy in a positive way would be to maybe take up a spiritual practice that you have been wanting to but have not been able to. You might find that your dreams are intensified. And then another direction, there's always two sides to each coin. Another direction that this could go would be a little bit of a delusion and deception type of way. I've already seen this turn out in a couple instances, and how I see this is kind of just maybe an action in a scenario that doesn't quite work out the way that it seems to be. It might not be all that it's cracked up to be. And you might think that you're going to get more out of it than what you really are. So that's just something to kind of watch for. And just if something doesn't turn out the way it's supposed to, then that means it wasn't meant to be. And sometimes that's a lot easier said than done. But if you're able to kind of roll with it that way, then that's kind of the best way to do that if possible. So if we're able to kind of focus the energy to the more positive side, to the more spiritual side, then use it for a full moon ceremony. That would be a great way to use it. So we have this big crossroads that's in front of us. With this full moon. So what does this full moon mean? So with this information, what do we do with it? What do we do with the full moon? Well, I see this, like I said, I see this as a crossroads. I see this as change, evolution. I see action that is going to take you down your right path. I see the possibility to handle things in a more mature way, and a lot of times when you can handle things in a more mature way, then the outcome just works out a little bit better. I see the possibility to rise from the ashes, rise from the pain, rise through whatever is holding you back. Like I said, we are halfway through this Venus cycle right now, so kind of look back at the Venusian parts and the Venusian activities of your life. Look at your birth chart, look at where Venus is in your chart, and look over the last 9 months and see where you might have handled things in a morning star type of way. So for the next 9 months, where can you handle that in an evening star type of way? Where can you handle that in a more mature Venusian type of way? We also have, a lot of this is kind of a large, ideal, grandiose idea type of thought, and I think it's very nice that tying all this together, for the full moon, we have Mercury at the end of Virgo. So Mercury is at the final degrees of Virgo, that's its home sign. This is going to kind of keep us grounded, I feel like this is bringing back practicality. It's bringing a detail-oriented mental focus, and it's going to increase our organization. So for the next couple days, there's definitely an increase focus and increase ability of the mind. So use that with the full moon. So I'd like to kind of know what you do on a full moon. If anybody has any full moon rituals that they typically do. What I like to do with the full moon is I find that the full moon is very energetic and works in a very charging type of way. So I like to charge my crystals under the full moon. I will cleanse crystals, rocks under the new moon, and I will charge them under the full moon. So if I have crystals that I've been using and I think they could use a reset, then I put them under the new moon light and set my intentions with them to cleanse them of any negativity, and I always thank them for the energies that they've provided and the energies that they've pulled from me. And then on the full moon, I use my whatever current intentions that I have, and I put them under the full moon to charge them with those intentions. The full moon brings lots of powerful energy with it, so we can harness that energy and we can use it, and we can even kind of bottle it up in a way. So I kind of just brought out a few crystals that I've been using recently. We're talking a lot about Venus and Venusian activities, so I have lots of red tone type crystals right now and pink tone crystals. So I have little rose quartz hearts that I'm currently using, and then I have some red colored crystals. So I have some red jasper here. I have some fire agate, which is very symbolic and representative of kind of like the phoenix rising out of the fire, right? Kind of Venus rising from the underworld and coming back from the underworld. I also have some red tiger's eye, because tiger's eye for me is the most grounding crystal that I could find. It was my first crystal, and it will always be my favorite crystal. So this is a red tiger's eye, kind of bringing in that love Venusian element to it. And then I have some kyanite here. So this is blue kyanite. This is also one of my absolute favorite crystals, but I think it's a good one to use right now because it has a focus of the mind. So it brings in that Mercurial in Virgo type of intensity. So I'm using this to open up my mind and to focus my mind. And protection is always a good idea, depending of different reasons. You can protect yourself, you can protect others, you can protect your mind, you can protect your body, you can protect your home. So I always have some sort of protection in rotation, and so here's some black tourmaline that I am currently using. And I've been playing with a lot of fluorite lately. So I have some fluorite pieces here. So these are what I'm looking at charging under the full moon tonight. Full moon energies are always felt for 3 days. So the day of the the day of the full moon, day before, day after. That's kind of a loose guideline. Oops. And then I have a couple other of my favorite quartz crystals that I'm gonna charge as well. One other thing that I wanted to kind of mention is moon water. So here I have a jar of new moon water and full moon water that I have collected. I'm really fortunate that at the moment I have full jars of both rainwater from rainwater from storms that occurred on a new moon and on a full moon. But you can also just take any collection of water and you can sit it under the moon and it will charge it with those energies, and you can charge it with your intentions. So my intentions for the new moon and the full moon, as a general rule of thumb, are I initiate and I fulfill. So for the new moon, I initiate, and for the full moon, I fulfill. Those are the intentions that I like to use, and then I kind of change it based on what I have going on and what the intentions I'm trying to set. But those are my go-to intentions. So I'd like to know what you do for the new moon and the full moon. I'd also like to know if anybody would be interested in ever doing new moon, full moon ceremonies together in a live session. So if that's something you'd be interested in, go ahead and let me know. You can message me on Facebook or on other social media platforms. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe we can try to do new moon, full moon ceremonies together. We can do them on YouTube and Facebook Live or something like that. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. If you have other ceremonies that you like to do around the full moon, go ahead and leave it in the comments so that way others can learn and grow too. I'm always looking for new things and new ideas to add to my practice. So if there's something I can learn from you, I'd love to do so. I really hope you enjoy this full moon we have here. I think this is a great one. I feel really really positive about this. I know that my videos tend to focus more on the positive than the shadow side. I try to bring up both and mention both, but look more to the positive side because that's where we want to stay. We don't want, or at least personally, I don't want to hang out on the shadow side of emotions for too long. I like to acknowledge them and I like to process them and get through them, but then I like to try to move on and let go from them. I don't want to hold them in. So I feel if you can take the energies that are there and you can look at both sides, then you can consciously stay on the positive side, which is what we're looking to do, right? Thank you for joining me. Thank you.